studio here. Up next at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, as he does every Friday, Frank Carini with EcoRI. I did see walk through the door, and he's around the corner.
Right here, around the corner.
You're back. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Took me a little while to get in here. They closed the road,
They
so
have
that confused the heck out of me.
A lot going on away Boston Street right now. It was open before, now it's closed. Lots of road work. So if you're coming downtown, give yourself plenty of time. Appreciate you giving yourself plenty of time to make it in here.
I left a little bit earlier.
Did you sweat it a little bit? Like, am I going to make this go local?
I was getting a little nervous because I'm not that good with directions, and it threw me off my course, even though I've lived in Providence for 12 years.
Am I going to make it to go local on time? Well, I appreciate you came in because, as always, checking out EcoRI, stories that they have going on this week. One of the ones that I wanted to start off with, because I know we talked a little bit about what we want to talk about today, this DEM Welcome Center in Richmond.
Yep.
Talk to us about the controversy here. At the $7.2 million Arcadia Natural Resources and Visitor Center that the DEM wants to say it'll be a resource for folks, but clearly the surrounding areas aren't too happy about this.
No, the Richmond and Exeter Town Councils certainly aren't. It's not really the money either. It's coming out of DEM's line budget, but it's more about building a place where people say they go, sledding in the winter, they go picnicking in the summer and stuff, and they don't want to see it disturbed by building something else in the woods. DEM will say, it's going to get more people there. It's going to house their wildlife biologists there, so they're right on site.
What do you think? It's an interesting struggle, especially in the environmental community, because as you pointed out, coming from the DEM, so it's not like you're fighting big oil here.
Right. I'm torn. I'm against it, but I can kind of see what DEM's trying to do. If you do have a facility there like they do, the name escapes me now, it's down in Charlestown.
Okay, so there's other facilities like
other
this.
facilities like that are nice. I prefer if they use me personally preferred if they used another spot or an already developed spot, like we've had this conversation before. But this isn't a high up on my thing of like what we're doing, but I wish we would leave that area alone and build it somewhere else. But.
Well, I guess the impetus for the news on EcoRI was that DEM released the traffic study, and they said there'd be no adverse impact to traffic or the surrounding areas. I'm assuming trying to placate the surrounding towns. But as pointed out by EcoRI, I just want to read this quote here. The issue is people are concerned that there hasn't been adequate publicizing of what's going on at the DEM. Have you been following it? Would you agree with? Is that an accurate contextualization?
Yeah, I would agree with it. I think DEM has even said that they could have done a better job and should have done a better job with public meetings. Basically, it was in, I don't know what years, 2, 3, 4 years in development, and then it was just sprung on even the town councils down there. So, yeah, they could have done a better job. I don't know if it was just because they didn't think it was going to be that big a deal, or somebody didn't schedule the public hearings, or they're trying to sneak it in. I don't know the reason, but that's a legitimate beef, that if I lived down there, even as a Rhode Islander, they didn't, and as a journalist, they didn't have a public hearings on it. They kind of just threw it upon everybody at the last minute after everything had gone way down the road.
So here's an interesting contrast. We'll move on to another sort of political legislative issue. As one of your colleagues, Tim Faulkner, pointed it out, was this kind of this legislation to expedite building and the construction projects is pushed through by the Rhode Island building contractors. And Russ Moore came in last week. It was like putting it on the hot list.
I heard him.
Need more construction. So if anyone ever says, we are quite balanced, you got Russ Moore's view and then you have EcoRI's view, this is something that's very much deposed by folks who are in the environment and general planning, saying, why do things have to be fast-tracked? That might not be in the best interest of residents and Rhode Islanders.
It's not, and the municipal officials are against it too because they don't have the staff or the funding to do it quicker. They have small staffs and they're supposed to do it quicker. There was part of the bill that got thrown out was that if they didn't get it done in so many days, their developer or the application would get half their money back from the application process. But that got thrown out of the bill. But I think I understand. I'm not here to attack builders and building things. Like I always say, build something that people want in places that make sense. But every year, every general session, there's always some give-in or give-ins to building stuff closer to wetlands, get rid of slopes, including them in the building lots. Now it's speed up the process. Everybody's hurting for jobs too. It's not just the builders. There's teachers getting laid off, journalists are taking a beating. I understand jobs are important, but why are we so fixated on, again, this one industry, which I have no problem with. I used to be in construction when I got out of college. Granted, I was the grunt, but so I understand all that, but why, again, can't we build things that make sense in places that make sense.
Well,
that we
again,
need.
it's good that we can get folks in here who kind of can talk to both sides of it. Clearly, Russ was behind.
Yeah, I heard him. I disagree.
Yeah, of course you do. We're going to start hosting debates here in the Go Local studio. I'll get you and Russ, and we'll get the big gloves out. Maybe like the padded bats. We'll put padding around here and really make it a padded room and just let people know.
I don't think it would be that well watched.
Like
Mr. Burns fighting Smithers.
Yeah. But no, it's great to get the other side of it and why folks might have concerns with that piece of legislation. So just wanted to raise that as we were talking about the DEM building, just on the politics side of things. So speaking of the politics side of things, one of the pieces on EcoRI this week, a new pro-power plant group kind of coalescing and emerging, and of course backed by Invenergy. Clearly you must have expected this to be coming along. And down the pipeline.
Yeah, I didn't actually. I wasn't even thinking this. This story I didn't even know it was coming from Tim. All of a sudden,
just popped up
before
today.
I left for Providence,
Today.
I edited and put it online, and you saw it. It must have been like 2 seconds after it went live. And and some of the quotes from the gentleman in there. If you can read the story, I'm not going to mention his name, but it was just utter ridiculousness. It's just one is that Tim had asked him about, what about the carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions, and his quote was not exactly, but we don't have walls in Rhode Island that keep in the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions, so it's not a problem. I mean, it's just utter nonsense. The funding, it's just, I don't. If you want to argue with, like, at least the builders, I need jobs or we need the energy, but just disregarding climate change and greenhouse gas emissions by saying that Rhode Island's only a small player and it's minuscule, who cares? It's just typical BS that we've been hearing for years now from people that just want to get money from big oil.
Well, it was interesting.
Big gas in this case.
Big gas, because we've seen the grassroots effort by the folks who've been opposed to it, highly mobilized, out at events, on social media. This kind of seemed like a little grass topping. We knew that obviously Invenergy has been pushing hard through the lawyers, but to get those sort of community stakeholders to come on board and make it appear organic, do you think that rings? Do you think people? How do you think people will react to that?
To this new group called the Rhode Island for Affordable Energy or something. Everybody's for affordable energy, but there's also hidden cost behind it. What do I think most people will think? I don't know. Most people I know, and I would think that at least that guy's quotes are ridiculous. It's just, the guy made an ass of himself, if you ask me. But what do I think most people will think? I hope they think that. I mean, his stuff about climate change was so dismissive and so ignorant that it's appalling. As for, if you want to make, like I said before, argument that we need the energy or put people to work, at least that's an argument that you can have a discussion about it, but the stuff he brought up was ridiculous.
Well, that, again, just popped up this afternoon, EcoRI.org. If you're concerned about the power plant issue, check that out. I think that was Tim who had the piece.
Yeah, Tim Faulkner had spoken to the gentleman.
That had the piece. And talk to us, the young folks who did the walk this week to raise awareness about the power plant. Do you think it was effective?
Yeah, I think it was effective. The story got a lot of hits, and I think people really rallied around it. Anytime people in the community are out doing something, people like to rally around that. I think it did. I mean, is it going to affect the decision by anybody? I don't know about that. But I think it brought people, whether they're for the plan or against it, it brought people into the conversation a little bit more, so that's important.
And speaking of conversations, there were a few pieces up on EcoRI this week. You oftentimes get outside of the borders of Rhode Island and bring some other regional issues into play. A piece about Boston and looking at development there and kind of couching it in the light of what we had just seen of the president pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord and having mayors saying, we're gonna stand strong to make sure that we're, protecting the environment. And then some folks seriously having concerns up in Boston. So much development going on up there right now. We look here in Rhode Island, and you point out all the times, how better land use strategies need to be developed. But we're not the only ones who were wrestling with this, and by looking at what's going on in Boston. Yeah,
that was an interesting story. Our Boston-based writer, she's actually based in Somerville, where I used to live. That's outside of Boston. Whatever, it's Boston.
It's Boston.
It's Boston. And talking to people that are up there, because everything you hear out of Boston, I haven't lived there in a while, and it's, everything they do is great and all that, but it was good to see or read a story about, not good, I wish it wasn't happening, but that there's concerns in Boston too, where I thought everything was, copacetic and kumbaya.
Because they're so green. They have such, high standards that they were looking to push, and then some people pushing back and saying,
no,
might
it's
not be hitting it.
It's the same thing we do down here. We're doing all these studies and we have reports, but then, they look great on paper, but then nobody's really implementing them. Or they were talking about the seaport down there, and it was how it was rebuilt and redeveloped, and it's great, and it brought people into the city, but it never took into sea level rise or any of these other concerns. So, oops, what happens in 10 years? Are we going to have to deal with that?
There's so much construction going on in the seaport. I mean, you can't throw a stone without hitting a crane.
Right. So so that was I wish Boston. I wish part of me would have been like, oh, I wish that we didn't have that story, but there are people there that are concerned, and there are people with various organizations and coming from different backgrounds. So that's sad.
I like when you're able to take again this looks outside of Rhode Island, because we think we're always mired in issues and problems that we think that are just unique to us, but it's always good to get, I think, perspectives elsewhere and see how people are sort of addressing them there and the concerns they're raising.
Yeah, same thing. In Connecticut, same thing. They're dealing with problems there. So
and you hope for Rhode Island again, as we try to get more development moving, maybe learn some lessons and say here's conversations that should be had at the outset, not afterwards.
Exactly.
As we're looking for hopefully a good building boom. So, well, Frank, anything else you want to hit on today while you're in the studio here?
No, I don't think so. It looks like I'm going to have problems getting out again. It seems like the construction's
construction's still going on, but the rain has stopped.
The rain has stopped. So if you see me driving around the city around midnight, it means I'm still lost. So.
I just can't get out. Lots going on in the city. PVD Fest was last weekend. Lots going on this weekend. And of course, always stuff going on the environmental front that I appreciate your coming in here to talk about. Okay,
have a good weekend.
Carini, I will. Okay, giving the shout out. I don't know if that was the wave to the public or was it to Joe? Joe Calabro, Go Local sports editor, just walked in. Frank Carini with EcoRI, as he always does, comes in on Friday to talk about some of the latest articles on their site, talking about the biggest environmental issues facing Rhode Island. A couple of interesting things. One story that just broke this afternoon on the site, Tim Faulkner writing about kind of a new grassroots grass tops effort by Rhode Islanders aligned with Invenergy, supporting the power plant proposal. Now, of course, environmentalists, folks in Barville, there's already a faction in place already opposed to it. This is a new effort by Invenergy, and again, folks here saying we need affordable energy. Frank had his own take on some of the quotes about climate change and impacts there, but just worth the read if it's something that you were interested in and concerned about and want to take a look. EcoRI, appreciate Frank